When Security Officer Marcus Chen reached into the worn leather purse, he expected to find the usual items that pass through Logan International Airport's checkpoint daily. Instead, his fingers closed around a small velvet box that would change everything he thought he knew about the elderly woman standing before him. Inside lay the Medal of Honor, America's highest military decoration, awarded to Staff Sergeant Elena Vasquez for extraordinary heroism in Afghanistan. The same Elena Vasquez who had just been treated like a potential threat for carrying nail clippers. Elena stood quietly at the security checkpoint, her weathered hands folded patiently as Transportation Security Administration officers methodically searched through her belongings. At 72 years old, she had learned the art of invisibility that seemed to come naturally to women of her generation. Her gray hair was pulled back in a simple bun, and she wore a faded blue cardigan over sensible slacks. To the bustling crowd of travelers rushing past, she appeared to be just another elderly passenger, perhaps visiting grandchildren or heading to a doctor's appointment. The morning had started routinely enough. Elena had arrived at the airport 3 hours early, as was her habit, carrying only a small carry-on bag and her treasured leather purse. She moved slowly through the terminal, her slight limp barely noticeable to casual observers. The purse had belonged to her mother, brought over from El Salvador in 1952, and Elena had carried it through decades of life's milestones. Today, it contained more than the usual collection of receipts, medications, and personal items. Marcus Chen had been working airport security for 8 years, and he prided himself on being thorough but respectful. However, something about Elena's calm demeanor seemed to irritate his supervisor, Janet Walsh, who had been having a particularly stressful morning. Walsh was a woman in her 50s who had built her career on being tough and uncompromising, viewing any deviation from protocol as a personal challenge to her authority. "Standard procedure," Walsh had announced loudly when Elena's bag triggered a secondary screening. "We need to check everything." Her tone carried an edge of impatience. That suggested she viewed Elena as an inconvenience rather than a paying passenger deserving of courtesy. Other travelers in line began to shift uncomfortably, some checking their watches with obvious annoyance at the delay. Elena had simply nodded and stepped aside, accustomed to being treated as if her time held little value. She watched as younger passengers breezed through security with minimal scrutiny, their expensive luggage and confident demeanor seeming to grant them a different level of respect. When a well-dressed businessman complained about the wait, Walsh immediately opened another line to expedite his passage, leaving Elena to stand patiently while her belongings were examined with what seemed like unnecessary suspicion. The security process had become increasingly invasive over the years, and Elena understood the necessity of it. She had seen enough violence in her lifetime to appreciate the importance of vigilance. But there was something particularly demoralizing about being treated as if her very presence was suspicious. The young officer handling her bag seemed to be going through the motions, checking each item with mechanical precision while his supervisor watched with arms crossed. Elena's purse contained the usual items one might expect from a woman of her age and background. A small pill organizer with her daily medications for arthritis and blood pressure. A worn wallet containing pictures of her late husband, Roberto, who had passed away 3 years earlier. A rosary blessed by her parish priest. Reading glasses in a case that had seen better days. A small notepad where she kept track of appointments and grocery lists in her careful handwriting, but tucked away in a small zippered compartment, wrapped carefully in tissue paper, was something that told a different story entirely. Elena carried it with her always, not out of pride or for show, but because it represented the most defining moment of her life. The moment when she had proven that heroism knows no gender, no age, no preconceived notion of who deserves recognition. Walsh's impatience grew more apparent as the screening continued. She made pointed comments about efficiency and keeping the line moving, treating Elena's presence as a disruption to the smooth operation of her checkpoint. Other passengers began to express their frustration, and Elena could feel the weight of their collective annoyance. She had become an obstacle, an inconvenience, an elderly woman taking up too much time and attention. The irony was not lost on Elena. She had spent her entire adult life being underestimated, dismissed, or overlooked. As a young Latina woman enlisting in the Army in 1968, she had faced skepticism from recruiters who questioned whether she was serious about military service. During her training, drill sergeants had assumed she would wash out before completing basic training. In her first deployment, fellow soldiers had treated her like a mascot rather than a capable member of the unit. Even after her military service, civilian life had presented its own challenges. Employers who looked past her resumed to focus on her accent. Colleagues who assumed she was in her position due to affirmative action rather than merit. Neighbors who spoke to her slowly and loudly, as if her English wasn't perfectly fluent despite being born in Texas. The subtle and not-so-subtle messages that she didn't quite belong, that her contributions were somehow less valuable. Elena had learned to navigate these situations with grace and dignity, understanding that changing minds often required patience and persistence. She had raised 3 children who went on to successful careers, volunteered countless hours at her church and local veterans organizations, and maintained a quiet pride in her service to the country. But she had also learned that sometimes recognition came only when circumstances forced people to see beyond their assumptions. The security checkpoint represented just another moment in a lifetime of being judged by appearances rather than substance. Elena stood calmly, her hands folded, while officers treated her with the kind of casual disrespect that had become all too familiar. She watched Walsh's growing irritation with the same composed expression she had worn through decades of similar encounters. Marcus Chun continued his methodical search, checking each item with professional thoroughness. He was younger than Elena's grandchildren, and she could see in his eyes the same mixture of boredom and routine that characterized many service jobs. He wasn't deliberately disrespectful, but neither was he particularly engaged with the human being whose belongings he was examining. The bustling terminal continued its chaotic dance around them. Families rushing to catch flights, business travelers checking their phones, elderly couples navigating the complexities of modern air travel. Elena had become a small island of stillness in the rushing current, patient and uncomplaining while her life was temporarily dissected by strangers who saw only what they expected to see. What they didn't see was the woman who had earned the respect of hardened combat veterans through actions that had saved lives and changed the course of a battle. They didn't see the soldier who had proven that courage comes in many forms, that heroism isn't limited by gender or size or the preconceptions of others. They didn't see the recipient of the nation's highest military honor, a decoration earned through extraordinary valor under fire. They saw only an elderly Latina woman with a worn purse, someone to be processed efficiently and moved along. Someone whose time was less valuable than that of the other passengers in line. Someone who could be treated with casual indifference because she appeared to lack the status or influence to demand better treatment. Elena understood their perspective, even if she didn't agree with it. She had spent enough years being underestimated to recognize the signs. The slightly impatient tone, the perfunctory politeness, the assumption that she was probably traveling for some mundane reason that couldn't possibly be important. She had learned to carry herself with quiet dignity in such moments, knowing that her worth wasn't determined by how others chose to treat her. The small velvet box in her purse waited patiently, as it had for decades, ready to tell its own story. When the moment was right, Janet Walsh had built her reputation at Logan International Airport through 15 years of unwavering adherence to protocol and an iron-fisted management style that brooked no exceptions. She viewed her position as supervisor of Terminal I's main security checkpoint as a fortress to be defended against any threat to efficiency, order, or her own authority. At 53, she had worked her way up through the ranks of airport security, earning respect through sheer force of will and an ability to process passengers with mechanical precision. Walsh's office walls were decorated with commendations for operational excellence, photographs of her meeting various TSA officials, and a collection of challenge coins from different airports where she had conducted training seminars. She took pride in running what she considered the most efficient checkpoint in the Northeast, measuring success through statistics, passengers processed per hour, contraband items confiscated, and the absence of security incidents on her watch. Her management philosophy was simple and rigid. Treat every passenger as a potential threat, follow procedures to the letter, and never allow personal sentiment to compromise security protocols. She had seen too many of her colleagues make exceptions that led to problems, and she had built her career on the principle that consistency was more important than compassion. Every bag searched with the same thoroughness, every passenger subjected to the same level of scrutiny, every anomaly investigated with equal intensity. Elena Vasquez represented exactly the kind of passenger that triggered Walsh's most stringent instincts. An elderly woman traveling alone, carrying items that didn't fit the standard profile, moving slowly through a system designed for efficiency. Walsh had processed thousands of similar passengers over the years, and she had developed a particular impatience for what she privately called time wasters, travelers who didn't understand the importance of moving quickly through security. The morning had already presented Walsh with several challenges that had put her in a particularly unforgiving mood. A computer glitch had delayed the opening of 2 security lanes, creating bottlenecks that took an hour to clear. A new trainee had made several procedural errors that required Walsh's direct intervention. A passenger had filed a complaint about rough handling of expensive luggage, forcing Walsh to spend 30 minutes documenting the incident and retraining the officer involved. Walsh's approach to managing her team was based on the military model she had learned from watching her father, a retired Marine Corps sergeant who had run their household with the same emphasis on discipline and order. She believed that respect was earned through competence and consistency, not through personal warmth or flexibility. Her officers knew exactly what she expected, and they understood that deviations from protocol would result in immediate correction. Elena triggered the secondary screening. Walsh saw an opportunity to reinforce standards with her team. She positioned herself where she could observe the entire process, making notes on her clipboard about timing and thoroughness. Elena's calm demeanor and patient compliance didn't register as admirable qualities to Walsh. Instead, they seemed like signs of someone who had too much time on her hands and too little understanding of the importance of the security process. "Chun, make sure you check every compartment," Walsh instructed, her voice carrying across the checkpoint area. "We've had issues with passengers concealing items in places they think we won't look." Her tone was deliberately loud enough for Elena to hear, a psychological tactic designed to establish authority and communicate that special scrutiny was being applied. Marcus Chun, the 28-year-old security officer conducting the search, had been working under Walsh's supervision for 2 years. He had learned to navigate her exacting standards through careful attention to detail and strict adherence to procedures. Chun understood that Walsh's management style wasn't personal. She applied the same rigid expectations to every situation and every officer under her command. Chun had grown up in a military family and appreciated the value of clear chains of command and consistent protocols. His father had served in the Vajra Navy for 20 years, and Chun had been raised with respect for authority and the importance of following orders. He found Walsh's approach sometimes harsh, but ultimately effective in maintaining the high standards that airport security demanded. The other officers in the checkpoint area had learned to read Walsh's moods and adjust their behavior accordingly. When she was in what they privately called fortress mode, they knew to be extra thorough, extra careful, and extra professional. Elena's screening had triggered that mode, and everyone within earshot understood that this particular passenger was receiving the full treatment. Walsh's assessment of Elena was based on years of profiling experience and a systematic approach to identifying potential security risks. Elderly passengers traveling alone often carried items that didn't fit standard patterns. They moved slowly, asked questions that slowed processing, and sometimes became confused by instructions that created delays. Walsh had developed efficient methods for handling such passengers, designed to minimize disruption while maintaining security standards. Elena's appearance and demeanor fit Walsh's mental category of grandmother travelers, passengers who required extra patience but rarely presented actual security threats. Walsh's strategy was to apply thorough screening procedures quickly and professionally, documenting everything carefully to avoid complaints while ensuring that no shortcuts were taken that could compromise security. The business travelers in line behind Elena represented Walsh's preferred type of passenger. They moved quickly, understood the process, carried standard items, and rarely required extended screening. Walsh had opened an expedited lane for a well-dressed businessman who had expressed frustration about the delay, demonstrating her ability to balance efficiency with customer service when the circumstances warranted it. Walsh's military-style management approach had been shaped by her early experiences in airport security, when she had been one of the few women in supervisory positions. She had learned that respect came through demonstrating competence and maintaining authority, not through seeking popularity or showing what others might interpret as weakness. Her success had been built on proving that she could be tougher and more thorough than her male counterparts. The training manuals Walsh had written for new security officers emphasized the importance of consistent application of procedures regardless of passenger demographics. She had seen too many officers make assumptions based on age, appearance, or apparent social status that led to security lapses. Her approach was designed to eliminate such variables by treating every passenger with the same level of professional scrutiny. Elena's patient compliance with the screening process actually reinforced Walsh's assumptions about her as a routine passenger. Truly problematic travelers usually exhibited signs of nervousness, impatience, or resistance to procedures. Elena's calm acceptance of the extended screening suggested to Walsh that she was exactly what she appeared to be, an elderly woman carrying the typical collection of items that such passengers accumulated over decades of travel. Walsh's office training emphasized the importance of maintaining professional distance from passengers to avoid the kind of personal involvement that could compromise judgment. She had learned early in her career that treating passengers as individuals rather than security processing units could lead to inconsistent application of procedures and potential vulnerabilities in the system. The checkpoint's efficiency ratings were posted prominently in the break room, and Walsh took pride in maintaining metrics that consistently exceeded TSA standards. Elena's extended screening represented the kind of thorough attention to detail that Walsh believed was essential for maintaining those standards, even when it created temporary delays for other passengers. Walsh's assumption that Elena was a routine passenger carrying routine items was based on statistical probabilities and years of experience. The vast majority of elderly women traveling alone carried exactly the kinds of items that Elena appeared to be carrying, and Walsh had no reason to suspect that this particular passenger would be any different from the thousands of others she had processed over her career. The small velvet box in Elena's purse remained undiscovered as Chun continued his methodical search, following Walsh's instructions to be thorough but efficient. Neither Walsh nor Chun had any reason to suspect that they were about to encounter something that would challenge every assumption they had made about the quiet, patient woman standing before them. Elena's childhood memories were painted in the dusty hues of San Antonio's west side, where her grandfather, Sergeant First Class Miguel Vasquez, had returned from the Korean War with stories that would shape her understanding of service and sacrifice. The small house on Guadalupe Street had been filled with the quiet dignity of a man who had seen combat, but spoke of it only in whispers, usually late at night when he thought the children were asleep. Miguel Vasquez had been a medic with the 2nd Infantry Division, earning 2 Bronze Stars and a Purple Heart during some of the war's most brutal fighting. But it wasn't the medals that impressed young Elena. It was the way her grandfather carried himself, the careful attention he paid to wounded birds in their backyard, and the gentle manner in which he treated everyone he encountered. He had taught her that true strength wasn't about dominance or aggression, but about protecting those who couldn't protect themselves. The lessons began when Elena was 7 years old, shortly after her father abandoned the family, leaving her mother to raise 3 children on a seamstress's wages. Miguel had moved in to help, and with him came a different perspective on what it meant to be strong. While other girls her age were learning traditional domestic skills, Elena was learning to change tire inner tubes, tie knots that would hold under pressure, and most importantly, to observe situations with the kind of tactical awareness that had kept her grandfather alive through 2 years of mountain warfare. "Mia, you see that man walking down the street?" Miguel would ask during their evening walks through the neighborhood. "Tell me what you notice about him." Elena would describe the obvious things, his clothes, his pace, his direction, but Miguel would point out the subtle details that revealed character and intent. The way someone carried their shoulders could indicate confidence or fear. The direction of their gaze might suggest awareness or distraction. These weren't paranoid observations, but the practical skills of someone who had learned to read human behavior under life or death circumstances. Miguel's approach to teaching was never direct instruction, but rather a gradual awakening of Elena's natural instincts. He would take her to the neighborhood playground and ask her to identify which children were natural leaders, which ones needed protection, and which ones were likely to start trouble. He taught her to notice patterns, to see beyond surface appearances, and to trust her intuition when something didn't feel right. The stories Miguel shared were carefully chosen to illustrate principles rather than glorify violence. He told Elena about the time he had crawled through enemy fire to reach a wounded soldier, not because he was braver than others, but because he had noticed something his fellow medics had missed. The soldier was still breathing. He described how he had convinced a hostile Korean village to allow medical treatment by observing their cultural customs and showing proper respect for their elders. Elena's mother, Carmen, had initially worried about Miguel's influence on her daughter. Carmen wanted Elena to focus on education and traditional paths to success, viewing military service as something that took young people away from their families and communities. But she gradually came to understand that Miguel wasn't trying to turn Elena into a soldier. He was teaching her to be the kind of person who could handle whatever challenges life might present. The neighborhood where Elena grew up was rough by most standards, with poverty, crime, and limited opportunities, creating an environment where many young people struggled to find positive paths forward. Miguel had seen how military service could provide structure, purpose, and opportunities for advancement that weren't available through traditional civilian routes. But more importantly, he had learned that certain personality types were naturally suited to service, and he recognized those qualities in Elena from an early age. Elena's natural athleticism became apparent during her elementary school years, when she consistently outperformed both boys and girls in physical education activities. But it wasn't just her physical abilities that set her apart. She had an intuitive understanding of strategy and tactics that impressed her teachers and coaches. During playground games, she would naturally position herself where she could observe the entire field, anticipating moves before they happened, and coordinating her teammates' efforts with remarkable effectiveness. Miguel began incorporating more formal training into Elena's education when she turned 12, teaching her basic first aid techniques and emergency response procedures. He set up obstacle courses in their backyard, challenging her to navigate them while carrying increasingly heavy loads. He taught her to shoot using an old .22 rifle, emphasizing safety, accuracy, and the serious responsibility that came with handling firearms. The shooting lessons took place at a friend's ranch outside the city, where Miguel had access to proper facilities and enough space to teach safely. Elena demonstrated a natural talent for marksmanship that surprised even Miguel, who had been considered an exceptional shot during his military service. She had an instinctive understanding of wind conditions, trajectory, and the patience required for precision shooting. "You have a gift, Mia," Miguel told her after she had consistently hit targets that challenged much more experienced shooters. "But a gift is only valuable if you use it to help others. Remember that." Elena carried those words with her through her teenage years, understanding that her abilities came with responsibilities that extended beyond personal achievement. Elena's high school years were marked by academic excellence and leadership roles that prepared her for military service without anyone recognizing the connection. She was student body president, captain of the track team, and valedictorian of her graduating class. Her teachers saw a bright young woman with unlimited potential for college and professional success. Miguel saw a natural leader who was ready to serve something larger than herself. The decision to enlist came during Elena's senior year, when military recruiters visited her high school, while other students dismissed the presentation as irrelevant to their college-bound futures. Elena listened with the kind of focused attention that Miguel had taught her to apply to important decisions. She recognized that military service would provide opportunities to develop her natural abilities, while serving a cause worthy of her grandfather's legacy. Miguel's reaction to Elena's decision was complex, mixing pride with concern for her safety and future. He understood better than anyone what military service could demand, but he also recognized that Elena possessed the rare combination of physical ability, mental toughness, and moral character that made for exceptional soldiers. His only advice was simple: remember who you are, and remember why you're doing this. Elena's enlistment process was complicated by the attitudes of recruiters who weren't accustomed to young Latina women seeking combat-related positions. Year was 1968, and the military was still largely segregated by both race and gender, with most minority women channeled into support roles regardless of their abilities or interests. Elena's test scores and physical fitness assessments were exceptional, but institutional biases limited the opportunities available to her. Miguel had prepared Elena for this resistance, sharing stories of his own experiences with discrimination and the patience required to prove herself worthy of opportunities that should have been available based on merit alone. He had taught her that changing systems required both excellent performance and strategic thinking, understanding when to push forward and when to demonstrate value through patient competence. The day Elena left for basic training, Miguel gave her a small leather journal that had belonged to his own father, along with a piece of advice that would guide her through the challenges ahead. Excellence is its own reward, but it's also its own responsibility. When you prove what you're capable of, you're not just opening doors for yourself, you're opening them for everyone who comes after you. Elena carried that journal through basic training, advanced individual training, and eventually to Afghanistan, where the lessons her grandfather had taught her would be tested under conditions that would have challenged the most experienced soldiers. The fluorescent lights of the Quantico firing range cast harsh shadows across the shooting lanes at 0500 hours, illuminating the solitary figure of Staff Sergeant Elena Vasquez as she methodically worked through her morning routine. While other soldiers slept in their barracks or grabbed quick breakfasts before mandatory training, Elena had been awake since 0400, running through exercises that her superiors neither required nor recognized. The rangemaster had given her special permission to practice during off hours, initially out of curiosity about the quiet Latina woman who consistently outshot men twice her size. Elena's equipment was meticulously maintained, each piece cleaned and calibrated to standards that exceeded military requirements. Her M16A2 service rifle gleamed under the artificial lighting, its components assembled with the precision of a Swiss watchmaker. She had modified the weapon within regulation parameters, adjusting the trigger pull and grip to accommodate her smaller hands while maintaining the reliability that could mean the difference between life and death in combat situations. The shooting journal she kept was filled with detailed records of every practice session, environmental conditions, ammunition performance, and areas for improvement. Where other soldiers might fire their required qualification rounds and move on to other activities, Elena documented variables that most marksmen never considered. Wind speed and direction, humidity levels, barometric pressure, and even the time of day affected bullet trajectory. And Elena had developed an intuitive understanding of these factors that bordered on the supernatural. Her training regimen extended far beyond marksmanship. Every morning after range practice, Elena would disappear into the Virginia woods surrounding the base, practicing fieldcraft techniques that she had learned from military manuals, survival guides, and her grandfather's Korean War stories. She could move through dense forest without disturbing vegetation, construct concealed positions that were invisible from 10 feet away, and navigate using only natural landmarks and basic compass readings. The physical conditioning Elena maintained was grueling by any standard, designed to prepare her for challenges that might never come, but that she felt obligated to be ready for nonetheless. Her workout routine began at 0330 with calisthenics, followed by a 5-mile run through terrain that varied from paved roads to muddy trails to steep hillsides. She carried progressively heavier loads during these runs, building the kind of endurance that would allow her to function effectively under extreme stress. Elena's tactical knowledge came from countless hours spent studying military history, doctrine, and case studies of small unit actions. Her barracks room was filled with books on subjects ranging from ancient military strategy to modern counterinsurgency tactics. She studied the campaigns of Alexander the Great with the same intensity she applied to analyzing recent conflicts in Central America and the Middle East. Her notebooks contain detailed analyses of battles, highlighting lessons learned and principles that could be applied to contemporary situations. The language skills Elena developed during her off-duty hours reflected her understanding that modern military operations required cultural awareness and communication abilities that went beyond basic translation. She had achieved conversational proficiency in Arabic, Dari, and Pashto through intensive self-study, supplemented by conversations with native speakers she sought out in nearby communities. Her motivation wasn't academic. She understood that the ability to communicate with local populations could be crucial for mission success and force protection. Elena's reputation among her peers was complicated by the excellence she demonstrated consistently, but never boasted about. Her qualification scores were posted on the company bulletin board, showing perfect marks in marksmanship, physical fitness, and tactical knowledge. But rather than celebrating these achievements, Elena seemed almost embarrassed by the attention they generated. She deflected compliments and avoided conversations about her performance, preferring to focus on areas where she could continue improving. The isolation that came with Elena's level of preparation was something she accepted as necessary but never enjoyed. While other soldiers spent their free time socializing, watching television, or exploring nearby towns, Elena was usually found in the base library, studying field manuals or practicing equipment maintenance. She had learned to be comfortable with solitude, understanding that the kind of excellence she was pursuing required sacrifices that most people weren't willing to make. Elena's approach to leadership development was as systematic as her approach to marksmanship. She studied the biographical accounts of military leaders throughout history, analyzing their decision-making processes communication styles, and methods for inspiring troops under difficult circumstances. She volunteered for additional responsibilities, whenever possible, seeking opportunities to demonstrate competence while learning from experienced non-commissioned officers. The medical training Elena pursued went far beyond basic first aid requirements, driven by her grandfather's influence and her understanding that combat medics played crucial roles in unit survival. She earned advanced certifications in emergency medical procedures, studying anatomy and physiology with the same intensity she applied to ballistics and tactics. Her medic bag contained supplies and equipment that she had purchased with her own money, organized according to trauma protocols that she had memorized and practiced until they became automatic responses. Elena's intelligence preparation was perhaps the most sophisticated aspect of her self-directed training program. She had developed systematic methods for gathering, analyzing, and disseminating information that would be relevant to military operations. She studied satellite imagery, learned to interpret weather patterns, and became proficient in using various communication systems. Her understanding of intelligence collection and analysis rivaled that of soldiers who had received specialized training in those fields. Psychological preparation, Elena maintained, was as important as her physical and technical training. She had developed mental routines for managing stress, maintaining focus under pressure, and making clear decisions in chaotic situations. She practiced visualization techniques, imagining various combat scenarios and rehearsing her responses until they became instinctive. Her journal contained detailed analyses of her own psychological responses to different types of stress, helping her understand her capabilities and limitations. Elena's equipment maintenance went beyond military standards, reflecting her understanding that reliable gear could mean the difference between mission success and failure. She had learned advanced techniques for maintaining weapons, optics, communication equipment, and survival gear under field conditions. Her personal equipment was organized and maintained with a precision that impressed even the most experienced soldiers in her unit. The map reading and navigation skills Elena developed were comprehensive enough to qualify her for reconnaissance specialties, though she had never been offered such opportunities. She could navigate using traditional compass and map techniques, but she had also learned to use natural navigation methods that didn't rely on equipment. Her understanding of topography, terrain analysis, and route planning was sophisticated, enough to support complex military operations. Elena's understanding of small unit tactics came from intensive study of military doctrine combined with practical application during training exercises. She had analyzed hundreds of after-action reports, identifying patterns and principles that could be applied to various operational scenarios. Her tactical knowledge was theoretical rather than practical, but it was comprehensive enough to support leadership roles that she had never been offered. The cultural and linguistic preparation Elena maintained reflected her understanding that future military operations would likely involve interaction with foreign populations. She had studied the customs, traditions, and social structures of various cultures, focusing particularly on regions where American forces were likely to be deployed. Her language skills were complemented by cultural awareness that would prove invaluable in complex operational environments. Elena's personal standards for excellence were higher than any official requirements, driven by her understanding that exceptional performance might eventually create opportunities that weren't initially available. She maintained these standards consistently, day after day, year after year, building capabilities that far exceeded what was expected of someone in her position. Her preparation was comprehensive, systematic, and relentless, creating a foundation of excellence that would eventually be tested under conditions that would challenge the most experienced soldiers. The call came at 0347 hours on a Tuesday morning in March, jolting Elena from the light sleep that had become her norm during the pre-deployment phase at Fort Bragg. An emergency assembly was announced over the base-wide communication system, and within minutes, soldiers were streaming out of barracks, buildings, pulling on equipment, and rushing toward the designated assembly areas. Elena had been awake anyway, as she often was during the early morning hours, mentally rehearsing contingency plans and reviewing intelligence briefings that most soldiers read once and forgot. Alpha Company, 3rd Battalion, 75th Ranger Regiment was being activated for an immediate deployment to Afghanistan, where intelligence reports indicated that a high-value target had been located in a remote mountain village near the Pakistan border. The mission briefing that followed was delivered with the kind of urgent efficiency that characterized special operations, but Elena noticed details that seemed to escape other members of her unit. The target location was in terrain that would favor defenders, the weather patterns indicated challenging conditions, and the timing suggested political pressures that might compromise operational security. Captain James Morrison, the company commander, was a West Point graduate with 2 previous combat deployments who had earned his position through a combination of tactical competence and political awareness. He understood that successful operations required both military skill and careful management of expectations from higher command levels. Morrison had noticed Elena's exceptional performance during training exercises, but like most of his peers, he had difficulty envisioning how a female soldier might fit into the kind of high-intensity operations that Rangers typically conducted. Intelligence briefing revealed that the target was Ahmad Nazir, a Taliban commander responsible for coordinating attacks against coalition forces throughout the region. Nazir had been tracked to a compound in the village of Khost Feroza, where he was believed to be meeting with other high-value targets to plan a major offensive operation. The mission would require a helicopter insertion under cover of darkness, followed by a complex ground assault against a fortified position in difficult terrain. Elena listened to the briefing with the kind of focused attention that had become her trademark, taking detailed notes and asking questions that revealed her understanding of the operational challenges involved. While other soldiers focused on their individual assignments, Elena was analyzing the mission from a broader perspective, identifying potential complications and developing contingency plans that hadn't been addressed in the formal briefing. The team composition for the mission reflected traditional assumptions about combat roles, with Elena assigned to the base security element that would remain with the helicopters during the assault. Her marksmanship skills were acknowledged but not considered relevant to the close-quarters combat that was expected to characterize the main operation. The assignment was presented as important for overall mission success, but Elena understood that it was essentially a support role that would keep her away from the primary action. Staff Sergeant Michael Torres, the team leader for the assault element, was a veteran of multiple combat deployments who had earned his reputation through aggressive leadership and tactical innovation. Torres had worked with female soldiers in support roles, but had never operated with women in direct combat situations. His concerns about Elena's assignment weren't based on personal prejudice, but on practical considerations about unit cohesion and operational effectiveness under extreme stress. The preparation phase for the mission revealed the extent of Elena's readiness compared to other team members. While most soldiers were checking equipment and reviewing basic procedures, Elena was conducting detailed analysis of satellite imagery, studying weather patterns, and developing a comprehensive understanding of the terrain and tactical situation. Her preparation was systematic and thorough, covering contingencies that weren't addressed in the standard mission planning process. Elena's equipment load was carefully selected, based on her analysis of the mission requirements and her understanding of the challenges that might emerge during the operation. She carried additional medical supplies, extra ammunition, and communication equipment that exceeded standard requirements. Her personal weapons were maintained to standards that impressed even experienced soldiers. and her understanding of their capabilities was comprehensive enough to support precision operations under challenging conditions. The helicopter flight to the target area took place during the dark hours before dawn, when visibility was limited and enemy activity was typically at its lowest levels. Elena used the flight time to review topographic maps, study intelligence reports, and mentally rehearse various scenarios that might unfold during the operation. Her analysis of the terrain indicated potential complications that hadn't been addressed in the mission briefing, including alternate escape routes and defensive positions that could be used by enemy forces. The landing zone was located 3 kilometers from the target village, in an area that provided concealment from observation, but required a difficult approach march through mountainous terrain. Elena's role was to establish a security perimeter around the landing zone, maintaining communication with the assault team and providing overwatch for the helicopter extraction. The assignment was tactically sound but removed her from the direct action that would determine mission success or failure. As the assault team moved toward the target, Elena positioned herself in an observation post that provided excellent fields of fire across the surrounding terrain. Her understanding of the tactical situation was comprehensive, and she maintained constant communication with the team leader, providing updates on weather conditions, potential threat indicators, and other factors that might affect the operation. Her professionalism and competence were evident, but her contribution was limited to a support role. The first indication of trouble came when Elena observed vehicle movement on roads that should have been empty at that hour. Her analysis of the pattern suggested that enemy forces might be aware of the operation and were potentially moving to intercept the assault team. She reported these observations to the team leader, recommending increased caution and suggesting alternate routes that might avoid potential ambush sites. Elena's warnings were acknowledged but not fully appreciated by commanders who were focused on executing the planned operation according to predetermined timelines. The pressure to complete the mission quickly was intense, driven by intelligence reports suggesting that the high-value target might relocate if the operation were delayed. The decision was made to proceed with the original plan. Despite Elena's concerns about enemy activity in the area, the assault team's approach to the target compound proceeded according to plan until they encountered resistance that was more organized and intensive than intelligence reports had predicted. The enemy forces were well positioned, heavily armed, and demonstrated tactical sophistication that suggested advance warning of the operation. The assault team found themselves engaged in a firefight that was more challenging than anything they had encountered during training exercises. Elena could hear the intensity of the combat through her communication system, and her analysis of the tactical situation indicated that the assault team was facing challenges that exceeded their current capabilities. The enemy forces had established overlapping fields of fire, were using terrain to their advantage, and appeared to be following a coordinated defensive plan that suggested professional military training. The helicopter pilots were becoming increasingly concerned about the duration of the operation and the intensity of enemy fire, which was creating risks for the extraction aircraft that hadn't been anticipated in the mission planning. Elena's security position was receiving intermittent small arms fire, indicating that enemy forces were attempting to isolate the assault team by preventing reinforcement or extraction. The tactical situation was deteriorating rapidly, with the assault team pinned down by enemy fire and unable to advance toward their objective. The high-value target was likely aware of the operation and might be attempting to escape through routes that hadn't been covered by the assault plan. Elena's analysis of the situation indicated that the mission was at risk of failure unless immediate action was taken to change the tactical dynamic. The moment had arrived when Elena's years of preparation, training, and analysis would be tested under conditions that would challenge the most experienced soldiers. Everything she had learned, every skill she had developed, and every contingency she had planned for was about to become relevant in ways that no one had anticipated. Elena's radio crackled with increasing urgency as Staff Sergeant Torres's voice cut through the static strain evident in his normally composed tone. "Base, this is Alpha 1. We're taking heavy fire from multiple positions. Enemy strength is significantly higher than intelligence estimates. We need immediate support." Elena could hear the distinctive crack of a K-47 fire in the background, punctuated by the deeper boom of what sounded like RPG explosions. Her tactical analysis of the audio signatures told her that the assault team was facing a coordinated defense by experienced fighters. Through her high-powered scope, Elena could see muzzle flashes from positions that intelligence reports had indicated were unoccupied. The enemy had established a defensive perimeter around the target compound that demonstrated sophisticated tactical planning. She counted at least 12 firing positions arranged in overlapping fields of fire that would make any approach extremely dangerous. Her grandfather's training kicked in as she began mapping the defensive positions, identifying patterns and weaknesses that might be exploited. "Alpha 1, this is Base. I'm observing enemy positions that weren't identified in the intelligence." "Briefing," Elena reported, her voice calm despite the gravity of the situation. "Count multiple firing positions on the eastern ridge, approximately 400 meters from your current location. They appear to be using coordinated fields of fire to channel your movement into a kill zone." She could see the tactical situation developing in real time, recognizing the classic defensive strategy that was being employed against the assault team. Torres's response came through heavy breathing and the sound of bullets striking rock. "Base, can you confirm enemy positions with grid coordinates? We need to know what we're facing." Elena immediately began plotting the locations she had observed, using her map-reading skills to provide precise coordinates that would help the assault team understand the tactical situation. Her analysis revealed that the enemy had prepared for exactly this type of operation, positioning fighters to maximum advantage. "Alpha 1, enemy positions are at grid coordinates 456,789, 456,790, and 456,791. Additional positions observed on the western slope at coordinates 456,792 and 456,793. Elena transmitted, her training allowing her to maintain precise communication despite the chaos unfolding before her. She could see that the assault team was pinned down in a depression that provided cover from direct fire but left them vulnerable to flanking maneuvers. The helicopter pilots were becoming increasingly agitated as the operation extended beyond planned timelines. Elena could hear their conversations over the communication system, discussing fuel levels, enemy activity, and the risks associated with remaining in the area. The pilots were experienced combat veterans who understood that extraction operations became exponentially more dangerous as enemy forces had time to organize and reinforce their positions. Elena's observation of the battlefield revealed tactical details that weren't visible to the assault team from their current position. She could see enemy fighters moving between positions, apparently coordinating their defensive efforts through hand signals and predetermined movement patterns. The level of organization suggested that this wasn't a spontaneous response, but rather a carefully planned ambush that had been waiting for exactly this type of operation. "Alpha 1, be advised that enemy forces are demonstrating coordinated movement patterns. They appear to be attempting to flank your position from the north," Elena reported, watching as several fighters moved with practiced stealth along a ridgeline that would eventually bring them within effective range of the assault team's position. Her analysis indicated that the enemy was following a tactical plan that had been rehearsed and refined through previous engagements. Torres's response was immediate and concerning. "Base, we need options. The current position is not sustainable. Enemy fire is too accurate and too concentrated. We need to move, but all routes appear to be covered." Elena could hear the tactical problem in his voice. The assault team was trapped in a position that provided temporary cover, but no opportunity for advancement or withdrawal. Elena's mind raced through the tactical options available to the assault team, applying lessons learned from years of studying military history and small unit tactics. The enemy's defensive positions were well chosen, but they weren't perfect. Every defensive arrangement had weaknesses that could be exploited by forces with the right combination of firepower, mobility, and tactical understanding. She began identifying potential solutions that might change the tactical dynamic. Alpha 1. I'm analyzing potential support options for my position, Elena transmitted, her voice carrying a confidence that reflected her years of preparation for exactly this type of situation. She was already calculating distances, wind conditions, and trajectory requirements for precision fire that might disrupt the enemy's coordinated defense. Her marksmanship skills, honed through thousands of hours of practice, were about to become tactically relevant in ways that no one had anticipated. The enemy's defensive positions were within range of Elena's position, but engaging them would require moving from her assigned security location and potentially leaving the landing zone vulnerable. The decision would involve violating her orders to maintain perimeter security, but her tactical analysis indicated that the assault team's survival might depend on immediate action to change the battlefield. Dynamics, Elena's radio communications with the assault team were being monitored by the helicopter pilots and transmitted back to higher command levels, where senior officers were tracking the operation's progress. The tactical situation was becoming increasingly complex, with multiple competing priorities and limited options for resolution. Elena's position as a female soldier in a support role meant that her tactical recommendations carried less weight than they might have if delivered by a male counterpart. Base, we need you to maintain your current position and continue providing observation reports, Torres instructed, his voice reflecting the standard military preference for adhering to established plans, even when circumstances were changing rapidly. Elena understood the reasoning behind the instruction, but her tactical analysis suggested that passive observation wouldn't be sufficient to resolve the current crisis. Elena's years of preparation had taught her to think beyond immediate orders and consider the broader tactical situation. She could see that the assault team was facing a coordinated defense that exceeded their current capabilities. The enemy forces were well-positioned, well-armed, and demonstrating tactical sophistication that suggested professional military training. Standard approaches weren't going to be sufficient to overcome these advantages. The moment of decision was approaching rapidly. Elena could continue following her assigned role, providing observation reports while the assault team struggled against superior enemy positions. Or she could apply her exceptional marksmanship skills to disrupt the enemy's coordinated defense, potentially changing the tactical dynamic in favor of the assault team. The choice would define not only the mission's outcome, but also Elena's entire military career. Elena's grandfather's voice echoed in her memory. When you see what others miss, you have a responsibility to act. The tactical situation was deteriorating rapidly, and Elena possessed capabilities that could potentially save lives and ensure mission success. The question was whether she would have the courage to act on her analysis despite the personal and professional risks involved. The weight of Elena's rifle felt familiar in her hands as she moved away from her assigned position, her mind calculating the tactical geometry of what she was about to attempt. Every step took her further from the security perimeter she had been ordered to maintain, but closer to a firing position that could potentially save the lives of her trapped teammates. The decision crystallized in her mind with the clarity that comes from years of preparation, meeting a moment of absolute necessity. Elena's movement through the rocky terrain was nearly silent, each footstep carefully placed to avoid dislodging stones or creating noise that might alert enemy forces to her new position. the skills her grandfather had taught her during childhood walks through San Antonio. Neighborhoods had evolved into sophisticated fieldcraft that allowed her to navigate hostile terrain without detection. She carried her rifle at the ready, finger, alongside the trigger guard, prepared to engage targets at any moment. The firing position Elena selected was approximately 600 meters from the nearest enemy position, situated on a rocky outcrop that provided excellent concealment while offering clear fields of fire across the defensive perimeter. Her tactical analysis had identified this location during her initial surveillance, but she had never expected to use it. The position offered advantages that would be crucial for the type of precision shooting she was about to attempt. Elena's breathing became controlled and rhythmic as she settled into her shooting stance, applying techniques that had been refined through thousands of hours of practice. Her body positioned itself naturally behind the rifle, muscles relaxing into the familiar configuration that had become second nature through years of disciplined training. The scope came up to her eye with practiced smoothness, and the battlefield came into sharp focus through the precision optics. The first target was an enemy fighter positioned on the eastern ridge, his muzzle flash clearly visible through Elena's scope. He was firing controlled bursts at the assault team's position, his shots accurate enough to keep the Americans pinned down effectively. Elena's crosshairs settled on center mass, and she began the mental process of calculating the variables that would determine shot placement. Wind speed, humidity, temperature, and bullet trajectory all factored into the precise adjustments needed for a successful engagement. Elena's finger moved to the trigger, applying the steady pressure that would send her first shot downrange. The moment before firing was always the most critical, requiring absolute mental clarity and perfect coordination between mind and body. Her grandfather's voice echoed in her memory. Breathe, aim, squeeze, follow through. The rifle recoiled against her shoulder, and through her scope, she watched the enemy fighter collapse silently. The second target was positioned approximately 50 meters to the left of the first, firing from behind a rock formation that provided excellent cover but limited his mobility. Elena's bolt worked smoothly as she chambered a fresh round, her eyes never leaving the scope as she tracked to the new target. The adjustment was minimal, requiring only slight modifications to her aim. Point. Her second shot was as precise as the first, eliminating another threat to the assault team. Elena's radio remained silent as she continued her engagement sequence, understanding that communication might compromise her concealed position. The enemy forces hadn't yet identified the source of the precise fire that was systematically eliminating their defensive positions. Their confusion was evident in their increasingly erratic fire patterns and obvious attempts to locate the unseen threat that was disrupting their coordinated defense. The third enemy position was more challenging, requiring Elena to engage a target that was partially concealed behind natural cover. Only the fighter's head and shoulders were visible through her scope, presenting a much smaller target area than the previous engagements. Elena's training had prepared her for exactly this type of shot, but the margin for error was significantly reduced. Her breathing became even more controlled as she prepared for the most difficult engagement of her military career. Elena's shot placement was perfect, the bullet finding its mark despite the challenging target presentation. The enemy fighter's weapon fell silent, and Elena could see through her scope that another defensive position had been neutralized. Her methodical elimination of key positions was beginning to change the tactical dynamic of the engagement, reducing the coordinated fire that had been keeping the assault team pinned down. The assault team's radio communications began to reflect the changing battlefield conditions. Base, enemy fire is decreasing. We're seeing gaps in their defensive coverage, Torres reported, his voice carrying cautious optimism for the first time since the engagement began. Elena continued her systematic engagement of enemy positions, applying her marksmanship skills with deadly precision while maintaining perfect concealment. Elena's fourth target was positioned on the western slope, firing from a location that had been particularly effective at preventing the assault team from maneuvering. The range was extended, requiring Elena to make more significant adjustments for bullet drop and wind drift. Her calculations were precise, incorporating variables that most marksmen would struggle to account for under combat conditions. The shot was successful, eliminating another key defensive position. The enemy's confusion was becoming more apparent as their defensive coordination began to break down. Elena could observe through her scope that the remaining fighters were becoming increasingly desperate, their fire patterns indicating panic rather than the disciplined tactical approach they had demonstrated earlier. Her systematic elimination of key positions was having exactly the effect she had anticipated when she made the decision to abandon her assigned role. Elena's fifth engagement targeted a fighter who appeared to be attempting to coordinate the remaining defensive positions. He was moving between positions, apparently trying to reorganize the defense and identify the source of the precise fire that was dismantling their tactical advantage. Elena's shot eliminated this potential leadership figure, further degrading the enemy's ability to maintain coordinated resistance. The assault team's situation was improving dramatically as Elena's precision fire reduced the enemy's defensive capability. Torres's voice over the radio reflected growing confidence. Base, we're seeing significant reduction in enemy fire. Whatever's happening out there, it's working in our favor. Elena continued her engagement sequence, knowing that each successful shot brought the assault team closer to mission completion and safe extraction. Elena's ammunition count was becoming a consideration as she continued the engagement. Each round was precious, and she couldn't afford to waste shots on anything less than confirmed targets. Her training had taught her to make every shot count, and the current situation was the ultimate test of that principle. She had to balance aggressive engagement with conservation of ammunition for potential future threats. The enemy's defensive perimeter was collapsing under Elena's sustained precision fire, but she knew that her position might soon be compromised as the remaining fighters attempted to locate the source of the devastating marksmanship that was destroying their coordinated defense. She prepared for the possibility that she might need to change positions or defend herself against counterattack while continuing to support the assault team's advance toward their objective. Elena's grandfather's lessons about tactical patience were being tested as she maintained her methodical approach to target engagement despite the chaos of the battlefield around her. Elena's precision fire had created a window of opportunity that Staff Sergeant Torres immediately recognized and exploited. Alpha Team, move now. Advance by fire teams toward the objective. His voice crackled through the radio with renewed authority. Elena could see through her scope as the assault team began their coordinated advance, using the gaps in enemy fire that her marksmanship had created to maneuver closer to the target compound. The tactical situation was transforming in real time, shifting from a defensive stalemate to an aggressive assault. The remaining enemy fighters were struggling to maintain their defensive positions while simultaneously attempting to locate the invisible sniper who was systematically eliminating their comrades. Elena could observe their growing panic through her scope as they abandoned coordinated fire patterns in favor of desperate attempts at self-preservation. Their discipline was breaking down under the psychological pressure of facing an unseen threat that struck with surgical precision. Elena's sixth target was a fighter who had taken cover behind a stone wall, occasionally exposing himself to fire at the advancing assault team. The angle was challenging, requiring Elena to wait for the perfect moment when the target presented himself clearly enough for a clean shot. Her patience was rewarded when the fighter rose to engage the Americans, providing Elena with the target presentation she needed. Her shot was immediate and decisive, eliminating another threat to the advancing team. The assault team's movement was becoming more confident as they realized that the devastating sniper fire was supporting their advance. rather than threatening it. Elena could hear their communications improving, with team leaders coordinating movement and reporting enemy positions with the kind of tactical clarity that indicated they had regained control of the battlefield. The transformation from desperate defense to aggressive assault was remarkable to observe. Elena's seventh engagement targeted a fighter who appeared to be attempting to rally the remaining defenders. He was moving between positions, apparently trying to restore coordination to the collapsing defense. Elena's shot eliminated this potential leadership figure, further accelerating the enemy's tactical disintegration. The psychological impact of losing leaders under such precise fire was devastating to the remaining fighters. Morale and cohesion. The compound that housed the high-value target was now within reach of the assault team, but Elena could see through her scope that several enemy fighters were positioned to defend the structure itself. These positions were closer to the assault team's route of advance, requiring Elena to adjust her engagement priorities to support the final phase of the mission. Her calculations became more complex as she had to account for the proximity of friendly forces to her targets. Elena's eighth target was positioned on the roof of the target compound, firing down at the assault team with the advantage of elevated position and prepared fighting positions. The shot was technically challenging due to the angle and the need to avoid any risk to the assault team members who were advancing below. Elena's precision was absolute, her bullet finding its mark without any danger to friendly forces. The enemy's defensive capability was now severely degraded, with most of their prepared positions eliminated and their coordinated fire plan completely disrupted. Elena could observe through her scope that the remaining fighters were either attempting to flee or had taken cover in positions that rendered them ineffective. The tactical momentum had shifted decisively in favor of the assault team, who were now approaching the objective with confidence and tactical superiority. Elena's ninth engagement targeted one of the fleeing fighters who appeared to be attempting to escape with documents or equipment that might be valuable to enemy forces. Her shot was at extended range, requiring precise calculations for bullet drop and wind drift. The successful engagement demonstrated the full extent of her marksmanship capabilities, eliminating a target under challenging conditions while maintaining perfect concealment of her own position. The assault team's final approach to the target compound was supported by Elena's continued overwatch, her scope tracking across the battlefield to identify any remaining threats. Torres's voice over the radio reflected complete confidence. Base, we're approaching the objective. Enemy resistance has been neutralized. Outstanding support. Elena continued her vigilant observation, knowing that the mission's success depended on maintaining security until the high-value target was secured. Elena's 10th target was an enemy fighter who had remained hidden throughout the engagement, waiting for the assault team to approach close enough for a surprise attack. Only Elena's elevated position and systematic observation of the battlefield had revealed this concealed threat. Her shot eliminated the danger before the assault team was even aware of it, demonstrating the value of her tactical foresight and preparation. The target compound was now secure, with the assault team conducting room-by-room clearance operations to locate the high-value target. Elena could hear their progress through the radio communications, reporting cleared rooms and captured materials. The mission was approaching successful completion, but Elena maintained her overwatch position, understanding that extraction operations could be as dangerous as the initial assault. Elena's ammunition expenditure had been remarkably efficient, with each shot eliminating a specific threat to mission success. Her training had taught her to make every round count, and the current engagement had demonstrated the practical value of that philosophy. She had transformed a failing mission into a tactical success through the application of marksmanship skills that had been developed through years of dedicated preparation. The psychological impact of Elena's precision fire extended beyond the immediate tactical situation. The remaining enemy fighters in the area would remember that American forces possess sniper capabilities that could eliminate targets with surgical precision from concealed positions. The demonstration of such overwhelming marksmanship superiority would influence future enemy tactical planning and potentially save American lives in subsequent operations. Elena's systematic engagement of enemy positions had created a tactical masterpiece that would be studied in military schools for years to come. Her ability to identify key targets, calculate precise shot placement, and maintain perfect concealment while engaging multiple threats demonstrated the highest levels of military proficiency. The mission's success was directly attributable to her decision to abandon her assigned role and apply her exceptional capabilities where they were most needed. The high-value target was successfully captured, along with significant intelligence. Materials that would provide valuable information about enemy operations throughout the region. Elena's contribution to this success was undeniable, though her role in the mission's outcome would not be immediately recognized by higher command levels. She had proven that individual excellence could change the course of military operations. When applied with tactical intelligence and moral courage, Elena's grandfather's lessons about seeing what others missed had been validated under the ultimate test of combat conditions. Her years of preparation had culminated in a performance that saved lives and ensured mission success, demonstrating that true military excellence transcends traditional expectations about gender roles and unit assignments. The assault teams. Radio communications crackled with the controlled excitement of mission success as Torres reported. Base. Objective secured. High-value target in custody, preparing for extraction. Elena maintained her overwatch position, continuing to scan the surrounding terrain for potential threats while the team conducted their final operations in the compound. Through her scope, she could see the systematic movement of her teammates as they gathered intelligence materials and prepared the captured target for transport. Captain Morrison's voice came through the command frequency with barely contained relief. Alpha Team, outstanding work. Extraction helicopters are inbound, ETA 15 minutes. Maintain security until pickup. Elena could hear the helicopter rotors in the distance, their distinctive sound growing steadily louder as the aircraft approached the landing zone. The mission was entering its final phase, but Elena knew that extractions could be as dangerous as the initial assault if enemy reinforcements arrived. Elena's continued surveillance revealed movement on the ridgelines that hadn't been there during the initial engagement. Small groups of fighters were moving toward the area, apparently drawn by the sound of gunfire and the helicopter noise. Her tactical analysis suggested that these were reinforcements attempting to intercept the American forces before they could complete their extraction. The situation was developing into a race against time. Alpha Team, this is Base. I'm observing movement on the northern and eastern ridgelines. Possible enemy reinforcements converging on the area, Elena transmitted, her voice maintaining the calm professionalism that had characterized her communications throughout the operation. Through her scope, she could count at least a dozen fighters, moving with the kind of tactical discipline that suggested they were experienced combatants rather than local militia. Torres's response was immediate and concerning. Base, can you provide specific locations and estimated time to contact? Elena began plotting the movement patterns she was observing, using her tactical training to predict the routes the enemy forces would likely take to reach the extraction site. Her calculations indicated that the reinforcements could arrive within minutes of the helicopters, creating a dangerous situation for the extraction operation. Alpha Team, enemy forces are approximately 1 kilometer north and 800 meters east of your position. Based on their movement patterns, they could reach the extraction site within 10 to 15 minutes. Elena reported, her analysis providing the assault team with crucial information for planning their withdrawal. The timing was becoming critical, with multiple variables converging to create a complex Tactical situation. Elena's observation of the approaching enemy forces revealed that they were better equipped and more organized than the defenders who had been eliminated earlier. These fighters carried more sophisticated weapons and moved with the kind of coordination that suggested professional military training. Her assessment was that they represented a significantly greater threat than the forces the assault team had already defeated. The helicopter extraction was proceeding according to plan, with the aircraft maintaining a holding pattern just outside the immediate area while the assault team prepared for pickup. Elena could see the helicopters through her scope, their pilots maintaining tactical formation while staying alert for ground threats. The timing of the extraction would be crucial, requiring precise coordination between the aircraft and ground forces. Elena's tactical analysis of the developing situation indicated that the enemy reinforcements were positioning themselves to interdict the extraction helicopters as they approached the landing zone. The fighters were moving to elevated positions that would provide excellent fields of fire against the aircraft during their most vulnerable phase of the operation. Her understanding of the tactical geometry suggested that intervention would be necessary to ensure successful extraction. Alpha Team, enemy forces are positioning for helicopter interdiction. They're moving to elevated positions with clear fields of fire over the landing zone. Elena transmitted, her voice carrying the urgency that the situation demanded. The enemy's tactical sophistication was evident in their movement patterns, which demonstrated clear understanding of helicopter vulnerability. During landing and takeoff operations, Torres's response reflected his growing appreciation for Elena's tactical contributions. Base, we need options. Can you provide support against the helicopter threat? Elena was already calculating engagement possibilities, analyzing the ranges and angles that would be required to neutralize the enemy positions before they could threaten the extraction aircraft. Her marksmanship skills were about to be tested under even more challenging conditions. Elena's 11th engagement was against a fighter who was setting up what appeared to be a rocket-propelled grenade launcher in a position that would threaten the helicopters during their approach. The range was extended, requiring Elena to make precise calculations for bullet drop and wind drift. Her shot was successful, eliminating the RPG threat before it could be effectively employed against the aircraft. The assault team's movement toward the extraction site was being conducted under Elena's continued overwatch with her scope tracking across the battlefield to identify potential threats. The enemy reinforcements were becoming more aggressive in their approach, apparently recognizing that they had limited time to interfere with the American extraction operation. Elena's engagement priorities were shifting to support the safe withdrawal of her teammates. Elena's 12th engagement targeted a fighter who was attempting to coordinate the positioning of the reinforcement forces. Through her scope, she could see him using hand signals to direct other fighters toward positions that would maximize their effectiveness against the helicopters. Elena's shot eliminated this coordination capability, further degrading the enemy's ability to mount an effective interdiction operation. The helicopters were beginning their final approach to the landing zone, their pilots demonstrating the kind of tactical flying that characterized special operations aviation. Elena could see the aircraft maneuvering to avoid potential threat areas, while maintaining the capability to extract the assault team rapidly. The coordination between air and ground forces was approaching the critical phase where timing would determine success or failure. Elena's 13th engagement was against a fighter who had achieved a position that would allow him to fire directly at the helicopters during their most vulnerable moment. The shot was at maximum effective range for her weapon system, requiring perfect calculation and execution. Her bullet found its mark, eliminating the threat just as the helicopters were beginning their final descent to the landing zone. The extraction proceeded with textbook precision, with the assault team boarding the helicopters while Elena maintained overwatch from her concealed position. The high-value target and captured intelligence materials were loaded aboard the aircraft, and the assault team members took their positions for the return flight. Elena's role in the mission's success was becoming undeniable, though her contribution would not be immediately recognized by higher command levels. Elena's final engagement was against a fighter who was attempting to fire at the departing helicopters as they lifted off from the landing zone. Her shot was successful, eliminating the last threat to the extraction operation. The helicopters climbed rapidly away from the area, carrying the assault team and their captured prize to safety, while Elena remained in position to ensure their safe departure from the immediate area. The silence that followed the helicopters' departure was profound, broken only by the distant echo of rotor blades fading into the Afghan night. Elena remained motionless in her concealed position, her rifle still trained on the surrounding terrain as she conducted a systematic scan for any remaining threats. The mission had been successful beyond all expectations, but the full magnitude of her contribution was only beginning to dawn on those who had witnessed her performance. Captain Morrison's voice crackled through Elena's radio, with an edge of amazement that he was struggling to contain. "Base, this is Alpha 6. We need to understand what just happened out there. Can you confirm your engagement count?" Elena's response was characteristically understated. "Alpha 6. I engaged 14 enemy positions during the operation. All targets were eliminated." The simple statement carried implications that would reverberate through the command structure for years to come. The extraction helicopters had landed safely at the forward operating base, where intelligence officers were already beginning their preliminary interrogation of the captured high-value target. The materials recovered from the compound would provide crucial insights into enemy operations throughout the region. But the most significant development was the growing realization among the assault team members that their mission had been saved by exceptional marksmanship from an unexpected source. Staff Sergeant Torres was the first to piece together the full scope of Elena's intervention. During the post-mission debrief, he reviewed the timeline of events with mounting astonishment. "Every time we faced a critical threat, it was eliminated before we could even identify it," he reported to Captain Morrison. "The precision and timing were beyond anything I've seen in 3 combat deployments. Whoever was providing that support saved our lives multiple times." Elena's movement back to the extraction site was conducted with the same stealth and tactical awareness that had characterized her earlier repositioning. She methodically collected her spent shell casings, following the fieldcraft protocols that left no trace of her presence. Her equipment was secured and her position camouflaged before she began the careful journey back to the helicopter landing zone where a recovery aircraft was waiting. The helicopter crew that extracted Elena had been monitoring the radio communications throughout the operation, and their respect for her performance was evident in their treatment of her during the flight back to base. The crew chief, a veteran of hundreds of combat missions, approached Elena with obvious admiration. "Ma'am, I've been flying support for special operations for 8 years, and I've never heard anything like what happened out there tonight." Elena's return to the forward operating base was met with a mixture of curiosity and growing recognition from personnel who had monitored the operation. Word was spreading through the ranks that the mission's success had been achieved through the intervention of a soldier whose capabilities had been dramatically underestimated. The story was taking on legendary proportions even before the formal after-action reports were filed. Captain Morrison's initial skepticism about Elena's reported performance gave way to amazement as he reviewed the evidence. The precision of her shot placement, the tactical intelligence she had demonstrated, and the systematic nature of her engagement sequence represented a level of military proficiency that exceeded anything in his experience. His recommendation for Elena would reflect his growing understanding of her exceptional capabilities. The intelligence gathered from the captured high-value target was already providing valuable information about enemy operations throughout the region. Ahmad Nazir's capture would disrupt Taliban planning for months, and the documents recovered from the compound revealed details about planned attacks that could now be prevented. Elena's contribution to this intelligence coup was becoming increasingly apparent as the full scope of the mission's success was evaluated. Elena's performance during the operation had been observed by multiple witnesses whose testimonies would be crucial for any formal recognition of her achievements. The helicopter pilots, the assault team members, and the intelligence officers who had monitored the radio communications all provided consistent accounts of her exceptional marksmanship and tactical acumen. The evidence was overwhelming and undeniable. The formal debriefing process revealed the full extent of Elena's preparation and the systematic nature of her intervention. Her detailed knowledge of the terrain, her precise calculation of engagement parameters, and her ability to maintain perfect concealment while engaging multiple targets demonstrated a level of professional competence that challenged every assumption about her capabilities. The debriefing officers were forced to acknowledge that they had witnessed something extraordinary. Elena's modest demeanor during the debriefing process was consistent with her character throughout her military career. She provided detailed, factual accounts of her actions without embellishment or self-promotion. Her responses to questions demonstrated the same analytical precision that had characterized her tactical performance, revealing the depth of her professional knowledge and the systematic nature of her preparation. The medical examination conducted after Elena's return revealed the physical toll of her extended engagement sequence. Her shoulders showed signs of stress from the repeated recoil of her rifle, and her eyes were strained from hours of precision observation through her scope. The physical evidence corroborated her account of the sustained marksmanship performance that had saved the mission. Elena's equipment was examined by armorer specialists who were amazed by the precision of her weapon modifications and the quality of her equipment maintenance. Her rifle had been customized within regulation parameters to achieve maximum accuracy, and her ammunition had been carefully selected and prepared for optimal performance. The technical aspects of her preparation revealed the same attention to detail that had characterized her tactical performance. The after-action report filed by Captain Morrison would become a landmark document in military history, describing a level of individual performance that challenged traditional assumptions about combat effectiveness. Elena's intervention had transformed a failing mission into a tactical masterpiece, demonstrating that exceptional individual capability could change the course of military operations when applied with intelligence and courage. Elena's grandfather's photograph, carried in her pocket throughout the operation, had been with her during every shot fired in defense of her teammates. The legacy of service and sacrifice that had guided her development as a soldier had been honored through actions that would establish her own place in military history. The lessons learned from Master Sergeant Miguel Vasquez had been validated under the ultimate test of combat conditions. The ripple effects of Elena's performance were already beginning to spread through the military hierarchy, with senior officers requesting detailed briefings about the operation. The implications for training, assignment policies, and utilization of personnel capabilities were profound. Elena had proven that excellence could emerge from unexpected sources when given the opportunity to demonstrate itself under pressure. Elena's quiet return to her quarters after the debriefing was characteristic of her approach to military service. She had performed her duty to the best of her ability, saved lives, and ensured mission success. The recognition that would follow was secondary to the satisfaction of knowing that her preparation had been sufficient to meet the ultimate test of combat effectiveness. The secure conference room at Bagram Airfield buzzed with unprecedented activity as Colonel Patricia Hendricks, the commanding officer of the 75th Ranger Regiment, reviewed the after-action reports from Elena's mission. The documents spread across the mahogany table told a story that challenged every assumption about combat effectiveness and individual capability. Hendricks had commanded Special Operations Forces for 15 years, but she had never encountered a performance report that documented such extraordinary individual achievement under combat conditions. General Robert Clayton, the senior officer responsible for special operations throughout Afghanistan, had flown in specifically to review Elena's case. His aide-de-camp carried a briefcase containing Elena's complete military records, performance evaluations, and training documentation. The general's reputation for recognizing exceptional talent had been built through decades of identifying and promoting soldiers who demonstrated capabilities beyond their assigned roles. Elena stood at attention in the conference room, her classy uniform impeccable despite the short notice of the meeting. The ribbons on her chest represented years of exemplary service, but they provided no indication of the extraordinary performance that had brought her to the attention of the highest levels of military command. Her composure was perfect, reflecting the discipline and professionalism that had characterized her entire military career. Staff Sergeant Vasquez, I've reviewed your file and the mission reports from Operation Desert Thunder. General Clayton began, his voice carrying the authority of someone accustomed to making decisions that affected thousands of lives. The documented performance exceeds anything in my experience. 14 confirmed eliminations at ranges extending to 800 meters, perfect shot placement, and tactical intelligence that saved the mission. How do you explain this level of performance? Elena's response was characteristically modest and factual. Sir, my grandfather taught me to shoot when I was young, and I've maintained intensive training throughout my military career. I studied the terrain beforehand and recognized that the tactical situation required immediate intervention to prevent mission failure. Her explanation understated the years of preparation and the exceptional natural ability that had made her performance possible. Colonel Hendricks leaned forward, her expression reflecting growing amazement at Elena's understated description of her achievements. Staff Sergeant, the precision documented in these reports represents marksmanship capabilities that exceed our most elite snipers. The tactical intelligence you demonstrated rivals that of officers with advanced training and years of combat experience. This isn't just good shooting. This is military excellence at the highest levels. The intelligence officer present at the meeting, Major Sarah Thompson, had been analyzing the broader implications of Elena's performance. The captured high-value target has provided information that has already prevented 3 planned attacks against coalition forces. The intelligence materials recovered from the compound have revealed enemy operational patterns that will save American lives for months to come. Staff Sergeant Vasquez's intervention made all of this possible. Elena's personnel file revealed the systematic discrimination she had faced throughout her military career, with superior performance consistently overlooked in favor of less qualified male soldiers. Her marksmanship scores, physical fitness evaluations, and tactical knowledge assessments were all exceptional, but she had been consistently assigned to support roles that didn't utilize her capabilities. The documentation painted a picture of institutional bias that had wasted extraordinary talent. General Clayton's examination of Elena's training records revealed the extent of her self-directed preparation. Her personal training logs documented thousands of hours of additional practice beyond military requirements. Her equipment purchases showed investments in precision shooting gear that exceeded standard military issues. Her educational efforts included advanced coursework in tactics, intelligence analysis, and cultural studies that she had pursued at her own expense. Staff Sergeant Vasquez, your training records indicate preparation that exceeds requirements for special operations personnel, General Clayton observed. You've essentially trained yourself to standards that we don't expect from soldiers in your assigned specialty. Why did you pursue this level of preparation when you weren't being utilized in roles that required these capabilities? Elena's answer reflected the influence of her grandfather's lessons about service and excellence. Sir, I believe that my Capabilities should be developed to their fullest potential in service to my country and my fellow soldiers. I didn't know when or where these skills might be needed, but I wanted to be prepared when the opportunity arose to make a difference. Her response demonstrated the character and dedication that had driven her. Exceptional performance. The meeting participants were reviewing documentation that would fundamentally change military policies regarding personnel assignment and utilization. Elena's case demonstrated that exceptional capability could exist in unexpected places, and that institutional assumptions about combat effectiveness needed to be reconsidered. The implications extended beyond individual recognition to systemic changes in how the military identified and developed talent. Colonel Hendricks had been taking detailed notes throughout the meeting, recognizing that Elena's case would become a landmark in military personnel management. Staff Sergeant Vasquez, effective immediately. You're being reassigned to the 75th Ranger Regiment's Special Operations Detachment. Your new role will be as a designated marksman and tactical advisor, with responsibilities that match your demonstrated capabilities. The promotion orders being prepared would advance Elena to Sergeant First Class, with accelerated progression towards senior non-commissioned officer ranks. Her new assignment would provide opportunities to utilize her exceptional marksmanship, skills, and tactical intelligence in roles that matched her capabilities. The recognition was overdue but comprehensive, acknowledging years of overlooked excellence. Elena's response to the promotion and reassignment was characteristic of her approach to military service. Thank you, sir. I'm honored to serve in whatever capacity best serves the mission and my fellow soldiers. Her focus remained on service rather than personal recognition, demonstrating the character that had driven her. Exceptional performance throughout her career. General Clayton's final comments addressed the broader implications of Elena's case. Staff Sergeant Vasquez, your performance has demonstrated that our military is stronger when we recognize and utilize exceptional talent regardless of where it comes from. You've proven that excellence can emerge from unexpected sources when given the opportunity to demonstrate itself. Your example will influence how we identify and develop capabilities throughout our force structure. The Medal of Honor recommendation. Being prepared would recognize Elena's extraordinary heroism and tactical excellence under combat conditions. The citation would document her systematic elimination of enemy forces, her tactical intelligence that saved the mission, and her courage in abandoning assigned duties to provide the support that her teammates needed. The recommendation would receive unanimous support from every level of command. Elena's new security clearance would provide access to classified programs and advanced training opportunities that matched her demonstrated capabilities. Her assignment to special operations would utilize her exceptional marksmanship skills and tactical intelligence in roles that could influence military operations throughout the region. The recognition of her abilities would create opportunities for continued service at the highest levels of military excellence. The conference room meeting concluded with comprehensive plans for Elena's transition to her new role and responsibilities. Her case would be studied in military academies as an example of how exceptional individual performance could change the course of military operations. The lessons learned from her experience would influence personnel policies and training programs. For years to come, Elena stood before the advanced marksmanship class at Fort Benning, her instructor's uniform bearing the chevrons of a master, sergeant, and the distinctive tabs that marked her as one of the Army's most elite soldiers. The classroom was filled with carefully selected personnel from across the military, including several young women who had requested assignment to her program specifically because of her reputation. Among them was Private First Class Maria Santos, a 22-year-old from Phoenix whose shooting scores had caught Elena's attention during initial assessments. The walls of Elena's classroom were decorated with photographs from military operations around the world, tactical diagrams illustrating advanced marksmanship principles, and a glass case containing the Medal of Honor she had received 18 months earlier. But the item that drew the most attention from students was a faded photograph of Master Sergeant Miguel Vasquez in his Korean War uniform, positioned prominently on Elena's desk as a reminder of the legacy that had shaped her approach to military service. Elena's teaching methodology was revolutionary in its systematic approach to developing exceptional marksmanship capabilities. She had developed training protocols that identified natural talent, while providing intensive instruction for students who showed potential for advanced skills. Her program had achieved the highest graduation rates in the Army's sniper school system, with students consistently exceeding performance standards that had been considered exceptional before her innovations. Private Santos had been struggling with the psychological aspects of precision shooting, her technical skills adequate, but her confidence lacking during high-pressure situations. Elena recognized the symptoms immediately, remembering her own early challenges with self-doubt, despite exceptional natural ability. During individual instruction sessions, Elena worked with Santos to develop the mental toughness that would allow her technical skills to flourish under stress. The most important thing to understand about precision shooting is that it's not about the weapon or the target, Elena explained to Santos during a private coaching session. It's about seeing what others miss and having the confidence to act on that knowledge. Your grandfather taught me that lesson, and now I'm teaching it to you. The connection between generations of military service was evident in Elena's approach to mentoring young soldiers. Elena's influence extended beyond the classroom through her role as advisor to senior military leadership on matters relating to personnel utilization and capability development. Her recommendations had led to significant changes in how the military identified and developed exceptional talent, with particular emphasis on ensuring that capabilities were recognized regardless of demographic characteristics. Her policy work was having an impact throughout the military hierarchy. The advanced tactical training that Elena conducted went beyond traditional marksmanship. Instruction to include comprehensive education in battlefield intelligence, tactical decision-making, and leadership under extreme stress. Her students learned to analyze complex tactical situations, identify critical vulnerabilities, and apply precision capabilities to achieve strategic objectives. The holistic approach reflected Elena's understanding that exceptional marksmanship was only valuable when combined with tactical intelligence. Elena's reputation had attracted attention from international military organizations seeking to improve their own training programs. She had conducted instructional seminars for allied forces in 12 countries, sharing techniques and methodologies that had been proven effective in American military operations. Her international work was building relationships that would benefit American military interests for years to come. Private Santos was progressing rapidly under Elena's instruction, her confidence building as she mastered increasingly challenging shooting scenarios. During a particularly difficult exercise involving multiple targets at extended range, Santos achieved performance levels that exceeded the standards required for advanced special operations units. Elena watched with pride as her student demonstrated the same kind of exceptional capability that had once been overlooked in her own career. "Santos, you have the natural ability to be exceptional," Elena told her student after the successful completion of the challenging exercise. "But ability without purpose is just potential. You need to understand that your skills come with responsibilities to your fellow soldiers and to those who will follow in your footsteps. Excellence is not just about personal achievement, it's about opening doors for others." Elena's evening routine still included the intensive physical training that had characterized her entire military career. She maintained the same demanding standards for herself that she applied to her students, understanding that credibility in military instruction required ongoing demonstration of exceptional capability. Her personal training sessions were often observed by students who wanted to understand the dedication required for sustained excellence. The letter Elena received from General Clayton contained news that would define the next phase of her military career. The Army was establishing a new center for advanced tactical training, and Elena had been selected to serve as its first director. The position would provide opportunities to influence military training at the highest levels, with responsibilities that extended throughout the special operations community. Elena's response to the promotion opportunity was characteristic of her approach to military service. She accepted the increased responsibility as an opportunity to serve more effectively, understanding that her exceptional capabilities were most valuable when applied to developing the capabilities of others. Her focus remained on service rather than personal advancement, demonstrating the character that had driven her success throughout her career. The graduation ceremony for Elena's advanced marksmanship class was attended by senior officers from throughout the military hierarchy, reflecting the program's reputation for producing exceptional soldiers. Private Santos was recognized as the honor graduate, her performance during the course demonstrating the same kind of exceptional capability that Elena had shown years earlier. The cycle of excellence was continuing through the next generation. Elena's farewell address to her students emphasized the responsibilities that came with exceptional capabilities. "You have been trained to standards that exceed those required of most soldiers," she told them. "This training comes with obligations to your fellow soldiers, to your country, and to those who will follow in your footsteps. Excellence is not a destination. It's a standard that must be maintained throughout your careers." The small velvet box that Elena now carried contained not just her Medal of Honor, but also a letter from Private Santos thanking her for the mentorship that had changed her life. The letter concluded with words that echoed Elena's own philosophy. "You taught me that it's not about being seen. It's about seeing what others miss and having the courage to act on that knowledge." Elena's new office at the Advanced Tactical Training Center was decorated with photographs of her students who had gone on to distinguished military careers. The wall display included pictures from operations around the world where her former students had applied the skills and principles she had taught them. Her influence was multiplying through the achievements of those she had trained and mentored. The legacy that Elena was building extended beyond individual achievement to systemic changes in how the military identified, developed, and utilized exceptional talent. Her example had opened doors for countless soldiers who might otherwise have been overlooked, creating opportunities for excellence that would benefit American military capabilities for generations to come. The quiet woman who had once been underestimated was now shaping the future of military training and development. Elena's grandfather's photograph remained on her desk as a reminder of the legacy that had shaped her approach to service. Master Sergeant Miguel Vasquez's lessons about seeing what others miss had been validated through Elena's achievements and were now being passed to a new generation of soldiers who would carry those principles forward into their own military careers. The TS, a checkpoint at Logan International Airport, had returned to its normal rhythm. But Marcus Chun couldn't stop thinking about what he had discovered in Elena's purse. The small velvet box sat on his supervisor's desk, its contents having transformed their understanding of the elderly woman who had waited so patiently through their security screening. Janet Walsh stared at the Medal of Honor in stunned silence, reading the citation that described Elena's extraordinary heroism in Afghanistan. The same woman she had treated with casual dismissal had single-handedly saved an entire special operations team, earning the nation's highest military decoration through acts of courage that defied comprehension. Elena accepted the medal back from Walsh with the same quiet dignity she had shown throughout the screening process. "Thank you for your service, ma'am," Walsh said, her voice barely above a whisper. "And thank you for your patience with us today." The apology was inadequate, but it was all she could manage in the face of such profound misjudgment. As Elena walked toward her gate, other passengers and airport staff who had witnessed the discovery began to applaud. The sound grew as more people learned what had happened, creating a moment of recognition that Elena had never sought but richly deserved. She paused briefly to acknowledge the respect being shown, then continued on her way with the same understated grace that had defined her entire life. Elena's destination was Fort Benning, where she would be delivering the keynote address at the graduation ceremony for the Advanced Tactical Training Center that bore her name. A new generation of soldiers would hear her message about seeing what others miss and understanding that excellence knows no boundaries. What did you think of Elena's incredible story? Have you ever been underestimated because of how you looked or where you came from? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more inspiring stories of ordinary people who achieved extraordinary things. Hit that notification bell so you never miss our latest uploads.